Report 111419. For what purposes does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in House Report number 111-419, offered by Mr. Holt of New Jersey.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1105, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Holt, and a member who is opposed to this amendment is in control of 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, as you may know, the Federal Bureau of Investigation announced last week that it is formally closing its investigation into the 2001 anthrax attacks, a major bioterrorist attack on America. Those attacks are believed to have originated from a post box in New Jersey, disrupting the lives and livelihoods of many of my constituents and yours. We already know that the FBI too quickly jumped to conclusions about the nature and the profile of the culprit or culprits and quickly zeroed in on one individual who later received a multi-million-dollar settlement and apology for mistaken accusations. Subsequently, the investigators focused on another individual who then killed himself, and although the FBI never produced any physical evidence tying that individual specifically to the attacks, they closed the case. Indeed, this investigation was botched at multiple points, which is why re-examining it is so important. Given that the samples of the strain of anthrax that was used in the attacks may have been supplied to foreign laboratories, we think it's prudent to have the Inspector General of the intelligence community examine whether or not evidence of a potential foreign connection to the attacks was overlooked, ignored, or simply passed along to the FBI. Mr. Bartlett and I are offering an amendment that would require the Inspector General to examine whether or not evidence of a potential foreign connection to the attacks was overlooked, ignored, or simply not passed along. The report would be unclassified with a classified annex and would go to Intelligence, Foreign Affairs, Judiciary, and Homeland Security committees. To date, there's been no independent comprehensive review of this investigation, and a number of important questions remain unanswered. This amendment would address one of those questions. I reserve the balance of my time and ask how much time remains.
Gentleman has 3 minutes remaining. Gentleman reserves. Who seeks time in opposition? No one seeking time. Gentleman from New Jersey.
At this point, I would yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Bartlett.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you for yielding. I want to thank the gentleman very much for his initiative in this effort. Dr. Ivins was my constituent. The laboratory at which he worked is in my district, indeed just a few miles from my home. So I was very much involved in this case. His colleagues say that he would not have done it. And the FBI said early on that he could not have done it because the spores were weaponized and he had no ability to do that. More recently, they have been saying something a bit different than that. I have here some quotes that I think will be relevant here. Jeffrey Adamovitz, the former chief of bacteriology, former is important here because they would not let the current scientist at Fort Detrick talk to me. He just left so he could. The former chief of bacteriology for the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute for Infectious Diseases in Frederick, Maryland, where Ivins worked, wrote the Frederick News Post expressing serious misgivings about the FBI findings that Ivins sent the deadly letters that killed 5 and sickened 17 in 2001. The evidence is still very circumstantial and unconvincing as a whole, he wrote. I'm curious as to why they closed the case while the National Academy of Sciences review is still ongoing. Is it because the review is going unfavorably for the FBI, is his question. Ivins' death came about a month after the Justice Department agreed to pay an out-of-court settlement valued at $5.85 million to scientist Stephen Hatfield, who had been the key suspect in this. He sued the Justice Department, which had labeled him a person of interest. He alleged that the federal government went on a smear campaign and leaked information that was damaging to his reputation. Apparently they agreed they paid him $5.85 million. They subsequently conceded that he was not involved in the case. Gary Andrews, another former chief at bacteriology lab in Frederick, said it wouldn't have been unusual for Ivins to work odd hours because he was working with animals and it was more convenient to do it then. He says that Bruce didn't have the skill to make spores like that.
Gentleman's
he
time
never
has expired.
ever could have made a spore prep like the ones found in the letters.
I yield an additional 30 seconds to the
Gentleman
gentleman.
is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you very much for your lead in this. This has been devastating to my constituents and the scientists at Fort Detrick. And, you know, this needs to be brought to a proper close. They did not believe he would have done it. The FBI said early on he couldn't have done it. Thank you very much for leading in this. Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New Jersey.
Madam Chair, it is beyond question that the FBI jumped to conclusions at least once, perhaps more than once, and many questions remain. This amendment would address one of those questions. Beyond this amendment, we still need a more complete examination of our government's response to these attacks, the most serious bioterrorist attack against the United States. This will look at whether there is a foreign connection to those attacks that has been overlooked, ignored, or not pursued. I yield back the balance of my time asking the support for this amendment.
The gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.